Greetings from the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, Rajiv Institute of Technology, Hassan. Welcome you all to the Faculty Development Program on Advances in Signal Processing and Wireless Communication in association with IETE Mysore Center. To begin with, let me take this privilege to introduce today's eminent speaker, Dr. B.R. Sujata, Professor and Head, Department of Electronics and Communication, Malnad College of Engineering, Hassan. She has completed her Bachelor of Engineering graduation from NIE Mysore and her Master's degree from IISc Bangalore. From VTU, she has obtained her PhD in the research area of optimum resource utilization techniques for routing in MANETs under the guidance of Dr. M. V. Satyanarayana, former principal MCE and former technical director RIT Hassan. Sujata Madam has around 36 years of teaching experience in technical education field since 1984, has guided more than 60 MTech and BE projects. Her guided project, Antenna Design for Spectroscopy Applications, has received Outstanding Project Award at 36th Series KSCST sponsored project exhibition at Belgaum. Presently, Madam is guiding 5 PhD scholars in the field of wireless sensor networks, underwater communication networks, MIMO systems, and cryptography in networks. Apart from her academic excellence, she has been recognized as Senior Member IEEE, Fellow IETE, and Life Member ISTE. She has conducted an international conference as Program Chair on Intelligent and Autonomous Systems at MCE Hassan in collaboration with Master Control Facility ISRO Hassan and Delft University of Technology, Delft, the Netherlands. She has visited USA and Malaysia to present papers in international conferences. To her account, she has 63 publications in international, national conferences and journals. As a faculty, she has also been a student learner and has attended more than 40 FDPs and workshops and conducted 24 short-term courses. Apart from her regular academic activities, she has been handling several responsibilities. To name a few: IEEE Association activities, BOS and BOE member, Faculty Advisor, Department of ENC, MCE Hassan, Academic Council member, MCE Hassan, BOE member for Mysore University, PG program, examiner for PhD students, Promotion Review Committee member for Master Control Facility, ISRO Hassan, and Chairperson, Sexual Harassment Redressal Committee, MCE, and as a member in MCE of Hassan. Madam, we are very honored to have you as our today's speaker. Thank you.
Everyone, a very good morning. Hope all of you are safe in this COVID-19 situation. For the next 40 to 60 minutes, I will be discussing the various concepts involved in underwater communication. This will possibly help many faculty and students to define problem statements for research. The overview of my presentation will be as follows. I will give you introduction, followed by the architecture for the underwater communication network, followed by applications, the channel modeling required, the research issues possible, and the simulation softwares available. So, we know that the earth is covered by water. 2/3 of the surface of the earth is covered by water. And if you see the history, water transportation has been very popular for both military and civilian purposes. And we have seen continents being discovered through water transportation only. But this ocean also has a problem. It has currents, the chemical composition is different, the ecosystems are different, and all these are varying parameters which is a function of space and time. And also there is a growing interest in monitoring the marine environment for scientific exploration, coastline protection, etc. So that is where we need to have underwater communication to accomplish these applications. So we can think of three modes of communication. The acoustic can be used, or the microwaves, or you can go in for optical. So as an example, the blue LED or the blue laser has been given in the figure. So you have the underwater vehicle, and on the shore you have the receiver. The receiver can be a transceiver because you need to send control signals also to the underwater vehicle. So to continue with the introduction, so the vehicle that is very ideal for this, it has to be a distributed system, and basically for monitoring you need sensors, and so you have an underwater wireless sensor network, and protocols, the rules and regulations, whatever you use for terrestrial, that can be applied for underwater also, and it is called as an underwater sensor network. But you need to modify, because atmospheric characteristics is different from water characteristics, and that is where we need to look for different technologies. Entirely it is not a different technology, a modified technology that needs to be used. So if you go back and see the literature, we have three people, Richard Roy and Stephen, somewhere defining autonomous underwater vehicles somewhere in 1960, but it took off only in 1991, and less than 30 AU vehicles have been successfully developed. So you have various underwater remote operated vehicles, but they have several drawbacks and then limitations, because all these vehicles are tethered to the ocean bed. That can be broken, or they can get entangled, so the communication will be lost. So that is where autonomous vehicles are being used nowadays to replace these ROVs, and communication system that is there in these vehicles is going to be very important, and because the problems are very complex in nature, and the most popular mode of communication preferred underwater is going to be acoustic. So when we look at these communication modes, so the three communication modes I defined in my previous slide, the radio frequency, the acoustic, and the optical. Radio frequency, it is widely accessed. You have propagation speed of that of the light, so data rate will be high, but it also has problems of higher attenuation, and you know that the electromagnetic spectrum is limited. They have so many applications, wireless applications, wired applications, and the EM spectrum has been completely used. So that is where you don't have a separate spectrum for underwater communication, and the range is very short, up to 10 meters. So you have several challenges if you use RF. But however, if you go for the acoustic, it is a longer link range. Then for long distance communication underwater it can be used. So, but the problems are low data rate. The propagation speed is just 1500 meters per second, that of sound. Okay, so there is propagation loss, and there is multipath problems, and the propagation speed is so low that you have very high latency also. So that is where you will have distortion in the time domain as well as in the frequency domain because of the multipath. And if we move on to the next type, that is the optical, we have high data rates, no licensing issues, the speed is high, but the problem is again the range, so about hundreds of meters, and ocean water or sea water, sometimes there is very high turbidity, that also increases the loss. So among the three, if we compare, we can see that acoustic is the most preferred form of communication underwater. So we look at the communication characteristics, and we know that acoustic and electromagnetic, they are different. Electromagnetic waves caused by interference, electric and magnetic field. Acoustic, you have the vibration of particles, And EM, electromagnetic waves, they require very high power, large antennas. So you cannot have that in the autonomous underwater vehicle. So you always prefer acoustic, and you will have to do modifications for these. So looking at all these characteristics, we can identify certain applications, because only applications are going to motivate us for research. So you have different types of applications. So one is environmental monitoring. So the climate, the tsunami, etc. You can monitor. Then pollution. Then you have the tsunami I was telling you, that is a natural disaster. Then oil and gas fields. You have to explore oil and gas, very much necessary. Though we are going in for alternative fuels, electric vehicles, etc., but still oil and gas is very much necessary. So we have the harbor protection that is required. So these are all almost civilian applications we can look for. Then you have the underwater exploration, because you have a lot of natural resources underwater, the marine phenomena. Then you have the deep sea archaeology also. So for these, and then you have the scientific data collection, the oceanography, geosciences, marine biology. Then for the military applications and for civilian applications, you have the search and survey required to detect objects. Then you will have to do imaging of the ocean bottom and mapping. So for you have several applications, so which is motivating us to take up research in the field of underwater communication. So I was telling you about for this communication you need to have a network. So what do you mean by a network? It is similar to a computer network where you have several nodes underwater. So if you look at the figure, you have a number of sensor nodes. So suppose you are monitoring the temperature of water, because you'll have to, if you are doing fish finding, okay. So based on the salinity of water, based on the temperature of water, you can locate fish. So to that you will have to monitor temperature. So you can have temperature sensors at the underwater at different depths, and to collect all this information you have the sink or the reference node, and then you have an AUV which will collect the information from all the nodes or from the sink, and which will be transmitted onto the surface. At the surface you have a control node situated on a huge ship, which you will have a platform for that, or you will have a floating buoy there, which will be the reference node. So you have multi-path propagation, multi-hop transmission in these scenario. So we'll have to look for what can be done. So when I look for generic layers, you can have 2D, 3D, etc. So this is the overall architecture for an underwater sensor network. So you see on the ocean bed, you have a number of sensors. So data transmission between sensor nodes will be 1D. So it is within water. And if the data transmission is done from the sensor node to the sink, that will be 2D. So it is 2 hops there. Then from the sink to the surface buoy or to the AUV, etc. So you will have the 3D. Okay. So on the surface, from the surface buoy, it goes on to an onshore infrastructure, where from there it goes on to the satellite or to another tower. Okay. So like this you will have the 3D architecture. So you have multi-hop transmission. So depending upon the number of hops, you define a 2D or a 3D architecture. So you see the 2D architecture from the ocean bed or at the different levels underwater to the surface. You have the 2D architecture. So you have, these are all the wireless, you can see the wireless transmission being done. From the, you can have clustering of the nodes also, where the leech protocol can be used as used for the terrestrial networks, or probably a different. So you have, if you remember the protocol suite, the 7-layer OSI model or the TCP IP 5-layer model, you have different protocols in the different layers, the application layer, the transport layer, the network layer, the physical layer. So whenever you talk of underwater communication, we are talking of the physical layer. But we need to decide the protocols in the other layers also. So the same protocols that we are using in the terrestrial network, it can be modified and used for the underwater networks. So you have the 3D architecture, okay, AUV, sensors to AUV, then to the anchor, to the surface station, to the surface sink. So you have multiple hops, so you have the 3D architecture. So based on the architecture, you will have the communication being done. So as I told you, you have the acoustic communication being used because you have low attenuation of acoustic waves in water, especially in thermally stable and deep water settings. In shallow water, the temperature variation is very high because it is nearer to the surface, there will be ambient noise, then multipath propagation also will be there, reflection, refraction, etc. The speed of sound is very small, it is 1500 meters per second. So you have large propagation delays. So, and the communication technology that you use for EM and optical, it will fail for acoustic. So you will have to do the modifications. So we'll have to study the characteristics of the acoustic channel. So you know that sound waves, when they travel through the water medium, water will absorb the energy of the wave, and due to the spreading of the energy density also is going to decay because the energy per unit volume of water is going to decrease. So research has been done in physics especially, and the path loss has been calculated. So the attenuation or the path loss for acoustic channels is given by A, which is a function of the length of the communication link. F is the signal frequency, because when you talk of audio, it is not a single frequency. It starts from 30 Hertz and goes up to 30 kilohertz. So it is also a function of frequency, and K is the spreading factor. So which is typically between 1 and 2. So regression analysis has been done, experiments have been conducted, and they have come out with the spreading factor. Then the absorption coefficient A of F, which is an increasing function of frequency. So that is to say, you know that at RF the loss is more. So similarly in the audio range also, as frequency increases, the absorption coefficient value will increase. So this has been modeled using empirical formula for F greater than 100 Hertz and for F less than 100 Hertz, and this is the equation which you will get it in any physics textbook on sound. So knowing these, you can calculate what is the transmission loss, and once you know the transmission loss, you can look for the SNR value and decide the transmission power. So you will be optimizing the SNR value and the transmission power for different losses that is occurring in the channel. So to decide this, you also need to study the characteristics of the sound waves or the acoustic waves. So one is low speed, okay, and it varies in dry air and underwater. So it depends upon the pressure of water, so the depth, then temperature, the salinity, etc. So if you look at this particular graph, so you can see the sound speed profile, how it is decreasing with increase in frequency and depth. So knowing these, and also I was telling you about the other problem in acoustic communication is the noise characteristics. So noise which is created underwater, and also the surface noise. So even if you forget about the surface noise, you have noise underwater, and you will have to do modeling. So in terrestrial, always we assume it is white Gaussian noise, okay. So but underwater it is not Gaussian, it is not white, because it is a function of frequency. What do you mean by white noise? The spectral density, noise per spectral density is going to remain constant from minus infinity to infinity ideally, okay, or within the bandwidth of consideration, you have the noise per spectral density being a constant. but underwater it is a function of frequency, and the frequency range is very small, 30 hertz to 30k. So that is where we'll have a non-white Gaussian process, and this is a combination of four independent noise sources. One is you have turbulence, and then underwater you always have ships moving around, so you have shipping noise. Then the waves, natural produced waves also will produce noise, and then you have the thermal noise. So whenever you need to calculate the noise power, you need to know the power spectral density. Noise power is equal to PSD into the bandwidth. So that is where you need to know the PSD. So the equations for PSD is as follows, which is again an empirical formula based on analysis. So for any frequency f in hertz, these are the equations. So calculating these values, you can come out with the PSD of the ambient noise given by the summation of all the four. And among these, the turbulence and the distant shipping noise is going to be very dominant at low frequencies, because the slow movements only actually will produce the delay spread and will increase the noise, and the thermal noise is significant at high frequencies. High means it's more than 100 kilohertz, so almost you can neglect it. So once you know the noise characteristics, once you know the signal characteristics is the sound characteristics. So once you know the channel characteristics as well as the signal characteristics, you can do the modeling. So that is where there is lot of research going on for the design of these systems, which will improve the performance. And whatever system you design, it should be robust. Robust in the sense that minor variations in SNR or temperature, etc., there should not be much change in the data that is received. So that is where you need to have a robust system even in the presence of channel distortion. And to construct a channel, the channel is there, but to do experiments, the cost is very high, and the logistics that is required is also too much. So that is where you cannot simply start off with deploying the networks and then doing experiment and trying to find out what is required. So that is where you need to do modeling and simulation. So, but some countries, for example, Italy, China, they have been performing at sea experiments. But the time that is required is too much, because that environment characteristics is changing, and the people are not having any control over it. So that is where we always prefer simulation, analysis, and then you have a model being developed, then you have another physical model being developed, conduct experiments, and then deploy the actual network. So that is the requirement for an accurate underwater acoustic channel model to do simulation. So you have a number of acoustic channel models that will provide tools. You can find out the performance, or you can predict the performance, and you can deploy the actual network. So this is a challenging problem. Now again, which particular model you are going to use, because the channel is characterized by frequency dependent path loss, and then you have a time varying multipath propagation. Why time varying? The speed is so low, so you'll have spreads and etc. So it's a time varying multipath propagation because of the low propagation speed. So the complete model what you have should account for the frequency dependent path loss, the channel sparseness, then you have Doppler shifting and spreading effects. So you can access the performance by characterizing the channel. So you can classify the channel as a multipath fading, and whenever you have multipath fading channel, you will have to characterize it statistically. So statistically means what? You will have to calculate the mean, values, the variance values, and then the randomness, etc. Then you will have to conduct a randomness test. So statistical analysis is required, and with all this you can allocate appropriate resources before you deploy the whole system. So at the physical layer you can decide the algorithms that is necessary. So once you decide that, and if you come to know that you will have to conserve power, for example, then at the higher layers also you need to see that you will have to conserve power, because all the sensor nodes, they are running on batteries. So once it is running on batteries, you know that the battery cannot work infinitely, it cannot provide power infinitely. So that is where the draining of batteries will occur, and you will have to replace the batteries, otherwise the network will come down or the network will get partitioned. So you will have many problems. So again now you have another problem coming up, because the network is going to get partitioned or the nodes can die. Localization becomes very important, and that is where localization is also a very important research problem in underwater communication. So coming back to channel characterization, so you need to see that what you do at the physical layer or what you decide at the physical layer, that also will decide what you need to do at the higher network layers also. So considering all this, you can come out with a very relatively accurate channel model. So I was telling you about different models. So one is statistical modeling. So in this you can use the ray theory. So for example, you know that in light you have the ray theory, you have the reflection and the refraction being considered. I hope you remember Snell's law and all that. So use the same ray theory and get a deterministic description of the multipath propagation. Then once you get the deterministic values, you will have got it. Then you can incorporate all that in the physical laws of acoustic propagation. So I was telling you in my previous slides, you will have to calculate the absorption coefficient, the spreading factor, etc., etc. So with these parameters, you can calculate those values and decide the SNR value. Then also with the statistical characterization, the time varying channel model can be developed. So this can be used for information theoretical analysis. So where do you use this information theoretical analysis? I hope you remember, it can be used for determining the capacity of the channel. Capacity will define the data rate. So that will help in designing the transceivers, the modems that are going to be used, etc. on the surface. So whenever we are doing statistical modeling, three distributions or two distributions will come to our mind. One is the Rissian and other one is the Rayleigh distribution. So Rayleigh distribution is used for all the randomly varying parameters or the rays that are arriving randomly. The magnitude is very small, but you have a number of components and they are highly random in time and frequency domain. Rissian is adding all the random components plus one LOS component, because you have line of sight propagation directly from the transmitter to the receiver, which will be dominating these random components, but algebraically adding all these random components, it becomes dominant. So that is where the Rissian distribution is going to be more accurate. So LOS plus the random. So using these distributions, you can come out with a PSD value and you can calculate the SNR. The other model you can think of is the autoregressive modeling. So you have a number of physics-based channel models that have been developed, but for large-scale simulations, both in space, time and frequency. Why you need space? You know that sound waves characteristics varies at different depths and in different oceanic environments, that is temperature, turbidity, salinity, etc. So that is where space is also one of the parameters. In the space domain also we need to find out. In the time domain also we need to find out, and also in the frequency domain. So simulations need to be conducted in all the three domains. So you can have a computationally efficient stochastic model, so that will replay all the acoustic communication channels. Then you have the environmental fluctuations also, and that you will have to capture and introduce into this autoregressive processes. So the accuracy of the model can be validated once you do the experiments and measurements at sea. So now coming to the research issue. So we know all the models that can be used, the characteristics we know. So now we can define the problem statement for the research. So the statistical properties are going to play an important role. So you can have a very bandwidth efficient and power efficient communication systems. So you will have to look for the which layer you are going to work. So not necessarily when I tell underwater communication, you need not necessarily stick to physical layer. You can look for the network layer also, where localization needs to be done. Okay, so that is where bandwidth efficient is. Look for power conservation, bandwidth conservation, sorry. So bandwidth efficient is where you look for minimum delay spread and minimum bandwidth usage. So power efficient, look for power conservation. So statistical knowledge is going to help. So you will have to look for adaptive systems. So what can be adaptive in nature? Modulation. So you can have adaptive modulation. So MIMO can be employed. Arrays of antennas, smart antennas can be employed. So you can optimize the use. So whenever I talk of MIMO, you can have a 2x2 or a 4x4, 8x8. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily mean 8x8 is better than 4x4. That is where optimization is required. So optimization techniques is also one of the research issues in communication in general, and also for underwater communication. And then adaptive coding. Okay, so you will have to do channel coding. So that can also be adaptive coding, which will further improve the gain and also the system performance. And then you need not do coding, adaptive modulation in isolated conditions. So you can have space-time coding techniques. ALMA-T is one example, which will exploit all the effects of time, frequency and spatial diversity. This is being done in terrestrial channels. So you need to see how you can employ it for underwater acoustic channels. Then the challenges. So it is short range acoustic communication. So whenever we talk of short range, you see it is already a multi-hop communication, and if it is going to be short range, the multi-hop becomes more, the number of hops increases, and whenever you go from 2D to 3D, it is so complex. So that is where you can look for ways and methods of increasing the range. Then whenever you talk of higher level in the OSI model, you look at the data link layer, the MAC layer. So multiple access techniques you need to look for, the time synchronization, then the localization protocols at the network layer. Okay, so all these are required because it's a very high latency acoustic network. Then at the application level, you need to know the scheduling that needs to be done. So lot of research is actually going on to extend the benefits of terrestrial sensor networks, and see whether it can be employed for underwater. It cannot be directly be used, because in terrestrial networks you are using RF, in underwater networks you are using sound. So the characteristics are entirely different. So that is where you need to be very careful. Then you need to build scalable and distributed underwater networks. So it is no use having 2 nodes, 3 nodes, or even 100 nodes. You need thousands of nodes. For example, if you are monitoring a volcano, for example, a sensor network, if I take, okay, moving away from underwater communication, if you are monitoring a volcano, okay, so to monitor the pressure and temperature, you need thousands of nodes, and they are all running on batteries. They need to be replaced, so you can't have limited number of nodes. So similarly, underwater, if you are monitoring the temperature, or if it is going to be for survey, you don't know where you have the objects, so you need to deploy thousands of sensor nodes, and managing these sensor nodes, having communication. I was telling you the partitioning of networks is going to happen. So that is where you have to build a scalable and distributed underwater networks, and that is also a very good problem statement, and it is a challenge. So with all this, you can define problem statements, number of problem statements you can get, and you can do research. And if you look at the work that is being done in many universities, you don't see much work being done in underwater communication, at least in India, in Karnataka. In research institutions it is going on, but in academic institutions you don't see much research. So that is where I request and appeal to the faculty, because many are doing in image processing and in other fields, ad hoc networks, sensor networks, etc. So there is a problem of repeatability, or your research becoming obsolete. So that is where you can look for underwater communications also has a new field, and start your research. So continuing with the research challenges. So I was telling you, you have thousands of sensors being deployed, and they are going to disperse. So once you deploy, they will not stay, they will disperse because of the water currents, and you don't know how they are going to spread also. It is random movement. On terrestrial network, for example, if you think of a vehicular network, you can have Manhattan model, because you know how the streets are on the roads are on the surface of the earth. But underwater, you don't have a definite path. So that is where the sensors are going to spread randomly. So you will have to consider random mobility only. So the sensor networks, you need to keep on configuring to have a continuous communication path. And the path what you define presently, it is independent of the previous path defined, because the nodes have moved randomly. So that is where network layer protocols are also very important. And before that, localization is a must for mobile sensor nodes under water. And also the aquatic environments, highly complex, I have been telling from the beginning. So a distributed scalable network is required. So I would like to conclude that the research is required at almost every level of the protocol suite. Okay, whether it is OSI model you are going to consider, or the TCP IP. TCP IP is more for commercial. So I would prefer you consider the OSI model whenever you are thinking of protocols and algorithms for underwater communication. So look for the OSI model, look for the protocols that can be used, how it can be modified, etc., and define problem statements. So I would like to list some open problems for research. One is statistical channel modeling, then how to increase the network capacity, then the data rate is very low. So that is where data compression is always required. Okay, for example, to give you a very common example, you always zip files and you transmit. When you want to transmit multiple files, you zip and send. So that is one form of compression you are doing. So similarly for underwater communication also you need to do data compression. So that is where you need to look for non-lossy compression techniques, not lossy, because the sensor nodes cannot be very intelligent and retrieve the data. So non-lossy compression techniques are required. Node localization is required, and then it is always preferred that you go for signal processing whenever you need, whenever you are doing communications. For example, now the FM radio, okay, previously it was all hardware, but you have FM on your radio in your mobiles. So I hope you understand that you don't have a circuit there. It is all signal processing that is being done, DFT, FFT, etc., which has replaced the discriminators, mixers, etc. So similarly in underwater communication also, you can have lot of signal processing being done. So you will have to look for it. Then adaptive modulation, coding, then channel estimation prediction, then multiple in-out channels. So for example, you can have array of antennas, and that is MIMO comes into picture. Then multi-user communication, okay. Then all this communication in a hostile environment. So where you don't have any control over the hostile environment, you'll have to do communication. Then as a part of the networks, okay, the network layout. So network layout is whether it is a star network or a bus network, etc. So you can look for the different topologies. But once you define a topology, it doesn't mean that the topology is going to stay. Suppose you have deployed it as a star topology, because the nodes are moving and there's going to be partitioning, the star will never emerge as a star. So the maintenance of the network is required. So you need to define a layout which requires minimum maintenance. Then resource allocation, then reuse, then you have to define an architecture, so 2D, 3D, etc. Then when you are working on the different layers of the protocol suite, it is going to be cross-layer optimization. So whenever it is going to be cross-layer optimization, if you want to have bandwidth efficient, then power requirement is going to increase. If you want the network to be maintained, again power has to be used. So it is all conflicting. Okay, you try to save one resource, the other resource will be used. So that is where it is going to be cross-layer optimization that is going to be required. Then the network protocols at all layers need to be considered. So once you do all this, you will have to have a demonstration of what you have done, whether for your examination or finally if you are going to deploy it commercially, you will have to give it to the customer or the consumer. So that is where first you start with simulation, get all the results, then you do experiments in water, then you build a prototype model. Once you finish the prototype model, the actual system can be built. So that is where the actual system being built, it is a hardware, software. So there also you can have some problems of interfacing the different units of the communication system. On the surface of the earth in the terrestrial network it's very easy, but underwater again interfacing the various, the sync node and the source node with the buoy, with the AUV, you will have to do interfacing. So that is where lot of problems, and that is where you need to look for solutions to those problems. So infinite number of problems, and a very good topic for research. So I was repeatedly telling you need to start with simulation. So I would like to identify certain simulation softwares that can be used. Most of you have worked in networks, you know that NS2 and NS3 is very popular. And the beauty of NS2 and NS3 is they have for underwater communication also. So you have Aqua Sim and Aqua 3D. Specifically for underwater communication, only the Aqua word itself tells you. Then similarly you have OpNet for terrestrial, Then modified form USNet is there. Then in Italy, the Sapienza University, they have come out with a software called Sunset. It is based on NS2. You can perform simulation, emulation, and real life testing, and it is a freeware. So that is very important. NS2, NS3 is also freeware, but limited programs are available. So you need to build and you need to write your own programs and put a patch onto it. Then you have the unit stack and many more are there. So look for appropriate software, and you can also use MATLAB also, and you can export the data what you have generated in the Aqua network onto the MATLAB and do the analysis. So you can have a combination of softwares being used to complete your work. So for my presentation, I have taken a number of references. I have just given you 3, and many more have been referred. So with this, I thank you all for patient hearing. I thank the HOD of Department of ENC Engineering, Dr. Arvind, and Mr. Yashwant for the support provided, and first of all for the opportunity provided in giving this talk. Thank you so much.